Hi, I'm Amber Collins, and I never thought the people who raised me would go so far as to lock me out of my own home. But when they stole my keys, they didn't just shut me out, they pushed me into a decision that turned everything upside down. The Tuesday it happened was like any other. The air was thick with the late summer heat of Ohio, and my shift at the clinic had been long. All I wanted was to get home, kick off my sensible nurse shoes, and sink into the worn-out armchair in the living room, the one that had been my grandmother's. I turned onto my street, the familiar oak trees forming a canopy overhead. There it was, the small blue house with the white trim, the house I had poured my life into. But something was wrong. I parked my car and walked up the familiar concrete path. I noticed the porch light was off, which was strange. My mom, Helen, was obsessive about leaving it on for me. I slid my key into the lock, but it wouldn't turn. I tried again, jiggling it, my frustration growing. It felt like the lock was jammed. I knocked, first gently, then with more force. Mom? Dad? Mark? Before we dive in, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling me, where in the world are you watching from? I love seeing how far this story travels. The curtain in the living room window twitched. My mother's face appeared in the gap, but she wasn't rushing to the door with a worried expression. She was just standing there, her face a blank mask. Then, the corner of her mouth lifted. It wasn't a smile. It was a smirk, cold and sharp. It cut right through the glass and into my chest. My blood ran cold. Behind her, my brother, Mark, came into view. He was holding my keychain, the one with the silver locket from my grandmother and the ridiculous fluffy flamingo I'd bought on a whim. He dangled it for a moment, then walked to the front door, slid open the mail slot, and dropped the keychain onto the porch. It landed with a soft, metallic jingle that sounded like a death knell. "What are you doing?" I yelled, my voice cracking. "Let me in." The door opened, but only a few inches, stopped by the chain lock. My father, Richard, stood in the opening. His face, which I had always known as kind, looked like it was carved from stone. "What's going on?" I pleaded, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Why won't my key work?" "We changed the locks, Amber," he said, his voice flat and devoid of any emotion. I stared at him, confused. "Change the locks? Why? You could have just given me a new key." My mother's voice came from behind him, sharp and superior. "There is no new key for you." The pieces started to click into place, but my mind refused to accept them. This was my family. This was my home. This couldn't be happening. I begged them to explain. I asked what I had done wrong. Mark laughed from somewhere inside, a sound that made my skin crawl. My father's eyes didn't meet mine. He stayed at a spot just over my shoulder as he delivered the final blow. "We've decided your brother deserves this house more," he said, the words as casual as if he were discussing the weather. "He needs to start his life, build a family. You've had your chance, now leave." The humiliation burned hotter than the summer air. My chance? What did that even mean? I looked to my left and saw Mrs. Gable from next door, frozen with her watering can poised over her petunias, her eyes wide. On the other side, the Henderson kids had stopped the game of catch to stay. My private nightmare had become a public spectacle. My own family was shoving me off my own porch in front of the entire neighborhood. "You can't do this," I whispered, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a deep, hollow ache. "This is my home, too." My father's expression didn't flicker. Not anymore. He closed the door. The chain rattled. The bolt slid home, and I was left standing on the porch, alone. I don't remember driving away. The next thing I knew, I was parked in the lot of a grocery store miles away, the engine off, the car filled with a suffocating silence. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I replayed my father's words over and over. Asterisk, "You've had your chance, asterisk." My mind flooded with memories, each one a fresh wave of pain. I remembered when my father lost his job at the factory 5 years ago. I was 24, working double shifts as a waitress to pay for my nursing prerequisites. Every week, I'd come home and slide an envelope of cash onto the kitchen table to cover the mortgage payment. My parents never called it a loan. They called it chipping in. I saw now that they had just been taking. I remembered the winter 2 years back when the roof started leaking. A storm had blown through, and water was dripping into the attic. My father said he'd get to it, but he never did. Mac complained that he was too busy with his online gaming tournaments. So I was the one who climbed onto the icy roof with a bucket of tar, patching the shingles myself while my brother watched TV through the living room window. My hands were numb for hours after, but the house was safe. The sharpest memory, the one that truly shattered me, was from years earlier. I was 19, and I had just received a small inheritance after my grandmother passed away. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to pay for my first 2 years of college outright. I had the acceptance letter from Ohio State pinned to my wall. My dream was right there. But my parents were on the verge of losing the house to foreclosure. One night, my mother sat me down at the kitchen table, tears in her eyes. "It's for the family, Amber," she'd said, her hand on mine. "It's an investment in all of us. This house is your future, too." So I did it. I walked into the bank with them and put my entire college fund, every last penny my grandmother had left me, into the down payment that saved our home. ** home. I now understood. The house existed because of me. The roof over their heads was dry because of me. The mortgage was paid because of me. And now, I was being erased. I had been nothing more than a placeholder, a tool to be used and discarded when my more deserving brother was ready to take his rightful place. I finally managed to drive to the small apartment I rented closer to the hospital. I'd kept it as a quiet place to study and to sleep after long shifts, a little sanctuary no one in my family ever cared to visit. Now, it was my only refuge. I walked into the sterile, unfamiliar space and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my empty hands. No keys, no home, no family. The silence in the room was deafening, amplifying the screaming in my head. My life, as I knew it, was over. I felt a despair so profound it was like drowning. I curled up on the bed, pulling a thin blanket over me, and for hours I just lay there, hollowed out. But as the sleepless night wore on, a different feeling began to surface beneath the grief. It was a slow, quiet burn of anger. They thought they had won. They thought I was weak, that I would just cry and disappear. They had underestimated me my entire life. My eyes scanned the small apartment. In the corner was a stack of boxes I'd never fully unpacked. One of them was labeled in my grandmother's elegant, looping script, * for Amber, personal. *. I slowly got up, my movements stiff. I pulled the box out and opened it. Inside were photo albums, old letters, and her favorite porcelain bird. And beneath it all was a thick manila folder. I'd seen it before when I first went through her things, but in my grief, I had put it away without much thought. I lifted it out. My name was written on the tab. I opened it, and my breath caught in my throat. It was filled with legal documents, deeds, titles, and a last will and testament. My grandmother, a shrewd and practical woman who had seen the way my parents favored my brother even when I was a child, had not left her estate to her son. She had bypassed him completely. The documents clearly stated that she, as the original owner of the house, had transferred the title into a trust, and the sole beneficiary of that trust, upon her death, was me, Amber Collins, me, and me alone. The house was legally mine. It had always been legally mine from the moment she passed away. My parents were, in the eyes of the law, tenants who had just illegally evicted their landlord. A strange calm washed over me. I wasn't hysterical anymore. I wasn't heartbroken. I was something else entirely. I walked over to my desk and sat down, the folder in my lap. I didn't have to beg. I didn't have to plead. I only had to act. The next morning, I called my grandmother's attorney, Mr. Davies. His voice was warm and kind, just as I remembered. Amber, it's good to hear from you, though I'm sorry for the circumstances, he said after I explained the situation in a calm, steady voice. He was silent for a moment. I was afraid this might happen one day, he said softly. Your grandmother was a very wise woman. She wanted to ensure you were protected. The documents are ironclad. The house, and everything in it that belonged to her, is yours. Your family has absolutely no legal claim. You can enforce this, Amber. What does that mean? I asked, though I already knew the answer. It means you can have them removed. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Mark. His voice was casual, almost friendly, a complete reversal from the mocking laughter of the night before. Hey, sis, he said, the word sis feeling like an insult. Look, things got a little heated last night. Mom and Dad were just stressed. Why don't you come back home? We can talk it out. Don't make this ugly. It wasn't an apology. It was a tactic. They realized I wasn't going to vanish quietly, and now they were trying to reel me back in, to manage me, to control the situation. They weren't sorry. They were scared. I felt a spine of steel form inside me. Make this ugly. I replied, my voice perfectly calm. You already did that when you threw my keys on the porch. Come on, Amber. Don't be dramatic. It's too late for that, Mark, I said. I've already made the call. You'll hear soon enough. I hung up before he could respond. The next 2 days was silent. Then, the storm broke. My phone exploded with texts and calls from my parents, my brother, even my aunt. They were furious, accusing me of betrayal, of destroying the family. Asterisk, how could you do this to us? Asterisk, my mother texted. Asterisk, after everything we've done for you. Asterisk. The irony was so bitter it almost made me laugh. Then, I got a call from Mr. Davies. The eviction notice was served an hour ago, he said. They have 48 hours to vacate the premises. Within days, the court order arrived. The truth was now undeniable, written on official letterhead. The neighbors were watching again. But this time, they weren't watching my humiliation. They were watching as a moving truck pulled up to the curb. They were watching as my father directed the movers, his face a mask of thunderous rage. They were watching as my mother carried out boxes of kitchen supplies, refusing to look anyone in the eye. They were watching as my brother loaded his video game consoles into the back of his car, his posture slumped in defeat. The day they were supposed to be out, I drove to the house. I parked my simple car across the street and waited. I didn't come to gloat or to triumph. I came with the quiet dignity my grandmother had taught me. A sheriff's car was already there, ensuring the process was orderly. As the last moving truck pulled away, I got out of my car and walked up the path. Mark was standing on the lawn, and when he saw me, his face contorted with rage. You, he shouted, taking a step toward me. You think you can just kick us out? This is our home. The sheriff, a large man with a calm demeanor, stepped between us. Son, the court has ordered you to vacate. He held up a paper. This property belongs to Ms. Amber Collins. Mark stared at the paper, then at me. The smirk he once wore, the one that had haunted me for nights, crumbled. It was replaced by a look of utter, powerless silence. He had nothing left to say. There were no more lies, no more manipulations. There was only the quiet, unchangeable truth. I walked past him, up the steps, and to the front door. Mr. Davies had sent a locksmith earlier. In my hand, I held a single, shiny new key. It slid into the lock and turned with a smooth, satisfying click. I stepped inside. The house was empty, echoing with the ghosts of their presence. But it was my house. I walked through the rooms, running my hand along the walls. Then I went back to my car and retrieved the one thing I had brought with me, a framed photograph of my grandmother, her smile bright and loving. I walked to the fireplace and set the picture on the mantel, right in the center of the room. I could hear my brother still yelling outside, his voice muffled by the thick wooden door. My parents were probably shouting, too. Their desperate banging on the door started, a frantic, hollow sound. It faded into the background as I stood there, looking at my grandmother's face. I whispered to her, my voice thick with emotion, "We are home again." I didn't gloat. I didn't scream back at them. I simply walked to the front door, turned the deadbolt, and locked it, this time with new keys in my own hands. The noise from outside eventually stopped, replaced by the sound of a car engine starting and driving away. And then there was peace. When they tried to erase me, I didn't fight with noise. I made one call, and the truth spoke louder than anything. If you've ever been betrayed by the people closest to you, drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more stories of betrayal that end in quiet justice.